Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. On today's video, we're going to be doing a little bit of preservation. And what I mean by that is this is a RAMCheck, which is a DRAM tester that JP sent in back in 2021, I think, to the channel. This thing is amazing. I've shown it on the channel a whole bunch of times. It's a DRAM tester. It's very, very comprehensive. It can test the speeds of different DRAM modules. I have a bunch of different interfaces to this. I'll let you test 30-pin, 72-pin, SDRAM, a bunch of stuff like that. And this particular piece of kit, when it was new, was very expensive, and they're still pretty hard to find. So the fact that JP was able to find this and send it in to me, and actually that reminds me, JP sent me a Arizona Department of Corrections lanyard, which is hanging there on my shelves there. What's really cool about this is I've just been able to go through all my DRAM, and I still have tons more to test, and see what's good and what's not. Well, the reason why we're going to be doing some preservation today is that I was reached out to from a viewer who said they have one of these as well, but the firmware on theirs is much older. And apparently the company that made this thing has gone belly up, and they used to be able to get firmware updates from them by emailing them. Apparently that's not possible anymore since, of course, the company is gone. So if I pull the firmware off this thing, and we can take a look inside and see what makes it tick, and then I can upload that to archive.org, so anyone else who has one of these RAMChecks can at least have the firmware that's on this unit. And maybe this will prompt other people to dump their firmware on theirs, and maybe there's some newer versions of firmware that exist out there as well, that even newer than what I have, and people can update their RAMCheckers. So let's take a look in case you're not familiar what this RAMCheck is all about. This was the original carrying case. And if we flip this open, let's move this so I don't knock things over on the bench, we can tell that I have the module installed in here that allows me to test 30-pin memory modules, 72-pin memory modules, and SDRAM modules. I think this is the one that's built in. And it looks like I wrote on the side of this test module, Vince. So Vince sent this in to me. I think when JP sent in the original RAMChecker, I didn't have this particular module, so I couldn't test those. Looks like we have some papers. So yeah, this was from Innoventions Incorporated in Houston, Texas. And this is the paperwork for the DDR2 SO-DIMM converter. And I don't have those converters in the box because, of course, that's new memory, newer than I ever need to use. Of course, I still have those. I just put them away. And you'll notice here that, for instance, to use this particular converter, you need firmware 2.31e or higher. I don't know what's on here, so we'll figure that out in a second. It looks like this tester was actually upgraded, what, in 2005, and the company that owned it was the Arizona Legislative Council. And I guess that makes sense because JP found this thing, I think in an auction, he said, just sitting there off to the side, and got it for a good price and thought that I could use it. So that's how I have it. Now it seems that I think all of this stuff was sent into Innovations for an upgrade, including the 72 and 30-pin adapter, which I'm quite sure, but I don't remember 100% that when JP sent it in, I didn't get those. And that came from, this module here came from Vince. Either way, looking at this actually kind of makes me think that there might be more to a firmware upgrade than just updating those EEPROMs. It looks like maybe the PAL has to be upgraded as well, or there's like differences between the kernel versions or the hardware versions. I'm not sure what the CMP CL2, CL3 is. This might have been results of some testing potentially. Anyhow, this particular unit I have must be on 2.23 firmware, and it must have come in with 2.06. Looks like let's see what else they upgraded. So they did upgrade the PAL code. Look at this, 021201/40, 021501/40. What we'll do is I'll try to dump this as well using my data IO. It's possible that I could dump that. The rest of this stuff, oh, this changed as well. Resistors, 6247C. I wonder if they actually made a hardware modification to do this firmware update. Did they change anything else on these things? Not sure. Upgraded by Calvin. Calvin's watching this, you could put a comment down below. Upgrade cost, free upgrade, 195 value. Also ordering the DDR Pro and DDR 200p converters. All right, well, when we open this up, we'll take a look for the ROMs to see the update, and then we'll also take a look at the PAL, see if we can figure that out and maybe dump it. Just going back to this first paper about the SO-DIMM converter, that's, yeah, nothing interesting on there. And here's the DDR2 adapter. It says you need 2.29 firmware. And as you can see here, it mentions that you could just go download the firmware update. So I suppose certain updates needed you to send it in, maybe for the new PAL. But if it was just a version upgrade like this, then maybe it could flash the chips. I think they're flash chips inside of this. Although, oh yeah, it does have a serial port on here and whatever that's for. It's not like there's USB. And there's this large connector on the side, which was another adapter. Now looking at the bottom of this thing, we have part number INN8668. There's the serial number for this, discovering RAMCheck, built-in demo mode. And there's a little pixel art guy. That's quite cool. Sensor positive, 7.5 volts DC, and I do have a power supply that came with this thing, which hopefully is, yep, 7.5 volts DC, but look at that, 4.4 amps. So I'm really just trying to document this thing, so if anyone gets one of these or finds one of these, then maybe they can get the right parts to make it work. Now I just removed this SIM adapter, so this is the one that I said came from Vince. Don't know if there's a whole lot going on here. There's a small little tantalum capacitor there, but just connects up to there. And then these really cool SIM sockets allow you to very quickly and easily insert and remove the memory modules under test. So these are very specialized, obviously. I don't think you could probably buy those anymore. And if you're trying to do RAM testing and you don't have these sockets, it would be kind of a pain to have to, insert and remove constantly, especially if you're testing a large amount of memory. Now it looks like for the 72 pin, there is a part number, 178-2. There's a little logo there. And there's a brand name, which I'm not going to try to pronounce because I'll screw that up. As for the 30-pin module, okay, same little logo with that little squiggle. It's on both sides. I don't see any part numbers though. So I can't help you there, but at least you can try to find the 72-pin one, maybe new old stock somewhere. Now it looks like this thing is just a completely passive adapter. And if you want to know the part number, there it is, INN8668-2. Yeah, and it sort of appears that this top PCB is there strictly to keep you from touching these pins. But it looks like the SIM socket's actually attached to the lower PCB and double the amount of pins that are normally on a 72-pin memory socket. Now this thing came with this CD, and I don't remember if this has been archived. If it hasn't been, I will dump this and put this on archive.org. So the power supply's got some power, and there's the on-off switch. Oh, version 2.35, quite a bit newer than this particular update. So this thing had another firmware update over the years. And I think that's what my viewer might have been talking about when it came to the version that they had. So it looks like this thing is detecting that this module is not plugged in at the moment. So it's just trying to check the 168p SD RAMs. We can push F3 for demo. Demo mode, there's our pixel art guy. Please upgrade the firmware regularly and get best results. Too bad that's just not possible anymore, huh? Introducing RAMCheck. Let's just get closer on the camera here. Escape to end demo. Okay, so it wants us to push the down arrow. Oh, previous page, F1 restarts. Okay. RAMCheck test is made up of 3 main parts: basic test, extensive test, and auto loop. And then you can optionally end any of those tests. The basic test. Basic test performs numerous quick tests to verify short, open, stuck, how do I skip? Conditions. So this is what the basic test looks like. Notice the red LED is on. Okay, I didn't see where that was. Oh, that was over here. You just can't see it. Caution, always insert remove when the LED is off. It's in standby. That's module power right there. The following tests are shown. So you have test animation. It tells you what kind of memory it is and the speed of the RAM and EDO and the size. You'll hear the following sound if the test is okay. There we go, and they get check marks there saying that all those bits are good. Data error in the basic test result is shown on the sound of graphic display. Effective bits with the pattern F2 and F5, find the actual bit numbers are bad. That's right, so you have error data bits. I remember you kind of like scroll through with the keys here. Yeah, there we go. It's showing all 16 data bits on this particular, or 32 on that module. So that would be like a 72-pin SIM. It detects wiring errors as well. And this is all just in the basic test. But then there are extensive tests which does abusive voltages and heats the memory up and whatnot. Nice. Endless testing, different algorithms, auto loop ends when an error is detected, or if escape is pressed. It's perfect for burn-in. Setup will delight all the engineers among you. You can set up test parameters, test flow, DRAM under test configuration, and more. I'll show you how you can set a timing parameter. Oh, wow. I'm not sure I've even looked at this. RAS, CAS, transition stuff. You can further experiment with such graphics in the setup program and timing menu. Our introduction will not be complete without mentioning the diagnostic mode. It has hundreds of functions used to develop and service the state-of-the-art RAMCheck unit. Diagnostics is entered via F5 from the standby screen with a special code. We conclude the presentation with a few slides about RAMCheck features and benefits. From Houston, Texas. Cute, NASA. Blazing speed, it is very fast. It's very cool. It's a very great tester. Easy to upgrade. Download program, so I guess you can control this thing through that serial port. Compact and portable, yes, it is, absolutely. You've made the right choice. I love that the engineers put this in here. Knowledge is power. Read the manual. And there's the website, www.innoventions.com. Okay, so if we go to F2 for setup, these are the options. Parameter, test flow, list setup, auto, config, SPD, prod info. What's that do? RAMCheck, serial number, firmware version. Let's just scroll through here. What else do we see here? Kernel 7, flash space 512, hardware revision 2. Yeah, so we have a 2008 date code, so that is a little bit newer than the paper we were looking at. PAL code, there's that PAL code, 021501, 021501. So the firmware that this is running, I guess, needs that version of the PAL, I assume, because that is different than this, right? 021201. Now it can detect the adapter that's plugged in, by the way, so there's none plugged in at the moment, which means, well, it says 40. And I don't know what alt parts means. Let's scroll down. Oh, there's the manufacturing date, calibration date, 2005. These must be calibration settings, perhaps. Not totally sure. SD clock, RCB version 107. I don't know. So those are the options on my unit. Now, if we take a look at the configuration menu, here's the DRAM under test. Okay, so this lets you sort of specify 72/30 pin memory, 168 pin, SDRAM, RC DIM check. Maybe that's a diagnostic utility. Oh, there's a chip tester? SOJ adapter, TSOP, 72 pin read-only SODIMM or Pro SODIMM, not sure. Sun DIMMs. Those must be all different adapters. I don't necessarily have all of those. There's a debug menu, which does this. Okay, I'm just gonna leave this alone. So I don't know what to do in there. Okay, I pushed F5 for diagnostic mode. Restricted area, please enter your code. Well, how do you do this? Oh, wow. Well, I don't know what the code is. Does anyone know what the code is? If you know what the code is, let me know, and then we can try this diagnostic mode. It said no to that. The way I have this configured right now, I think it just does a basic test, which is why when you hit F1, it's just gonna try and do a basic test. Well, the memory's not even installed, so of course that's gonna error out. And that's pretty much the way this thing works. I'm quite sure when this is plugged in, it does detect that this is in there. And I don't think you can use this one while this is connected. Like this kind of overrides that, even though it doesn't cover it up. Using this is always pretty self-explanatory and there's not much to it. Now let's open this up. I'm just gonna grab the 70s towel here because I don't want to flip this upside down and like put stress on these things. Because if those are broken, it kind of renders your tester much harder to use. So I flip this upside down here, and apparently, supposedly, the screws are underneath these rubber feet. Oh, nice, and they're the plug type, so that they don't actually have adhesive that comes off. Very nice. So it's a bit of a shame that when this company went under, that their firmware archives were not saved. Obviously, when they were going out of business, that was the last thing on their mind, was to try to preserve the firmware that was on their website. But it would have been nice for any owners of these. But they were probably thinking, who needs to test DRAM on such an old device like this? And they probably never would have thought that someone in 2025 would be interested in testing 72 pin and 30 pin memory like I do and other people watching this video. Oh, I just noticed there's a little contrast control for the LCD. I haven't noticed that that ever needs any kind of adjustment, but if you have one of these and the screen is hard to see or you can't see it at all, turn that control. And this is actually one of the reasons why I didn't put the adapter back on for testing, because I don't like to plug it in and unplug it unnecessarily. And I had a feeling, there we go, that I would have to lift the top cover off. Wow, there it is. Right, so it kind of makes me wonder, looking at this, that this top board that has these two RAM expansion connectors and this memory module might be different from one tester to another. It says DIMM board here, but maybe there's a version of this, for instance, that just has this module built into it and it doesn't have the DIMMs, for instance. Looks like we have a couple Alteras. I assume these are CPLDs. This is definitely some additional RAM. So the RAM checker itself has RAM. That could go bad. Probably that diagnostic mode that we looked at could detect that some of the stuff on here was bad. There's Xilinx CPLD. And then this looks like a pretty standard LCD, so that's cool. If that goes bad, that should be pretty easy to replace. In fact, you could probably get different color versions of these or ones with backlights and things like that. Part number INN 8668DB. Okay, and I can see that the ROMs and things are underneath this board. So I'm going to have to remove this as well. There was one additional fastener I did not see. There we go, this comes off pretty easily now. I noticed that this one, that just kind of floats. There, I just put it back on. So if we just place this in that position, yes, that literally just sort of sits on the PCB where there's no hole. And you can see a little bit of a witness mark right there where it was touching. Now it does have a little plastic thing there just to keep it from scratching through or making it short. But yep, okay, interesting. All right, looking at the bottom, maybe a little bodge wire, crystal oscillator, probably a little clock crystal for timekeeping potentially. Maybe that has something to do with as it keeps time as it runs, that it's able to keep accurate time. If you let this do burn-in for days testing a memory module, you'll have an accurate time, I guess. Well, now here's the main unit. Right off the bat, we have a freaking 486, 40 megahertz. How awesome is that? We have some scratched off part numbers. Really, these three chips have the part numbers scratched off. Absolutely freaking hilarious. That one as well. And this one. Wow, that's kind of curious. Do we see on our upgrade sheet, like it doesn't say where that chip is? Because some of these other ones have like R4, R32, or 23. But I was hoping it would say like, the U number. Because like this IC here is definitely a GAL, 18CV8. But these, on the other hand, I mean, they just took like a little die grinder and so I don't know. I don't know what those are. This one too, obviously trying to protect their intellectual property. There's our firmware, so I just need to mark which is which. Even and odd, okay, so it's 16 bits, even though we have a 32-bit processor. There's a missing IC down here, U13, which is just missing on my unit, and you just saw me using it, it works. We have a 74F244 8-bit bus buffer. As far as these goes, I mean, I would have just thought these were all like buffers, but why did they grind them off? Very odd. Underneath the display, it looks like we have some more RAM, SRAM probably, and some kind of a 40-pin DIP package down there. And I'm trying to see what the chip is. It's an NEC part. I wouldn't be surprised if that's like a parallel I/O chip, typically like a parallel port sort of thing that's used for driving the parallel input to the LCD. Underneath the buttons, we have an NEC 71059C-10. All right, so I just marked those for odd and even, just so I didn't mix those up. Oh, and I realized the viewer that reached out to me, Andrew, sent a picture of his unit. And it says down there, the version's a little different. You leave empty for RAMCheck. Mine just says made in USA in that exact spot. But many of the chips that are rubbed out on mine are not rubbed out on this one. So for instance, these two chips are rubbed out on mine, and they are 74AC 245s. So just bus transceivers. Like why would they have rubbed those out? Same with that one there on mine is rubbed out, and that's just a regular 245. Now, if we look up at the top here, these three chips are rubbed out on mine, this little one, and these two. Looks like a National Semiconductor analog to digital converter, and this is a Maxim part that does something. Not 100% sure, but this obviously is our PAL, RC PAL, RAMCheck PAL 2, and that's what we're going to need to try to dump. Mine is an ICT brand. I can't tell what that one is that's on Andrew's board. What else is rubbed out? This chip is rubbed out on mine. That's an LT1010. So this is probably all part of the like voltage testing and threshold levels and stuff that this thing can do. Anything else rubbed out on mine? No, it does not appear to be the case. And look, there's even an odd and even written on these chips as well. 39SF020, 39SF020, same part numbers, cool. This is rubbed out as well on mine, this chip, Analog Devices M692. So I suppose if you're going to try to recreate one of these, well, here's a better photograph, and I will make sure to upload this picture along with a photo of mine to archive.org or maybe GitHub. It just depends on where I stick this firmware. I'll put it in a link in the description though. But otherwise, these look identical. Let's see, there's a version number right here, part number PB, processor board, it all looks the same. There's a jumper there, mine is jumpered as well. Just looking to see if I see any other differences. Here's R30. Is that one of the one that was mentioned? R4 and R23 was mentioned. Part of me wonders if that's like some configuration stuff. There's 2 more test points. Mine has those as well. Oh, there is a jumper up here. Maybe that's for the RAM size. If you like put in the larger memory modules, larger dips that is. And there's another jumper up here, which is configured the same as mine as well. It's hard to see here in the picture, but it says low BL for that jumper and then high BL. Maybe a bias level, something like that. So the resistors we're looking for, R4 and R23. There's some resistors on the keyboard, but those aren't the ones. Another jumper there, JP1, configured the same way as mine. There's a resistor there, not labeled. Another one up here that's not labeled. I actually think potentially it's labeled underneath the component. See these resistors here and that one? Might be under there. But so far, this stuff looks the same. Oh, although actually looking at this upgrade sheet, the change is maybe the resistance value, 75 ohms, 56 ohms, 62 ohm, and 47. Anyway, that's definitely something to try to consider if you're upgrading one of these. Now, judging by the fact that they have shredded off a bunch of the part numbers, there's almost no way that this chip has not been write protected, but we'll test it nonetheless. I'll see if I can read it out. So I went ahead and I dumped the ROM chips. So I have both of those. Now what I want to try to do is see if I can read this PAL out. And I have my Data IO 2900. This is the device list. This is an ICT 18CV8P. Okay, I got to fire it up then, and we'll see if we can read this thing. I don't think this is supported by the regular programmer or this thing that I use for ripping the ROMs. All right, here's my Data IO 2900 programmer. This thing is a beast. I mean, it could be bigger. It's got a Motorola 68000 in here. It runs an OS, boots off floppies. It supports so many different types. Problem is when you boot this thing up, it takes like 20 minutes to do it. So let me get this plugged in and boot it up. I just noticed this screw is loose right here. Okay, now it's not. So I just want to throw the caveat out there that if this chip has been protected, write protected, which I'm pretty sure it has been, then this will not get a good dump. I am just looking at the floppy emulator on it and it is loading. So that's good. I have a flash floppy GoTech kind of thing in there just because I didn't feel like I was swapping disks around. And that's because the boot disk has the main operating system, but then all the algorithms for all the different devices are on different disks, and I'd have to have a bunch of disks to keep swapping around. There is a hard drive option for this thing, which I do not have, so I use the floppies, and probably boots a lot faster when you have the hard drive, but anyways, it is what it is. I don't use the thing that often, because a lot of stuff I could just use the USB programmer, where it is, this thing here. This works for most stuff that I work on, but occasionally I need to program something a little bit more weird and obscure, and this device can do it. It can program all sorts of really old EEPROMs and things that just are not possible with the more modern stuff. All right, so first thing we need to do is, if we're going to look at these files, we got to combine them because it's the odd and even bytes from 2 8-bit ROMs. You need to mix them back together or combine them back together to get one ROM that you can actually take a look at. So there's a utility that I have on my computer called ROMWhack, which was written by Jeff Kurtz. I don't know where I got this. Oh, there's a GitHub URL right there. freem/ROMWhack. We're going to do /m for byte merge of 2 files. So if we have 4 files, that would be because we have 4 8-bit ROMs for a 32-bit system, even though it says 32 bits, but this thing only has 2 ROMs. And I guess it's emulating, or it's running in 16-bit mode for the ROMs, kind of like a 286 would. So we're just going to do /m for 2 files. And you just put the 2 firmware files, and I don't know which order they're going to go into, so we're gonna do them both. So we're going to do even, then odd, and then we're going to do it again, but the other way around. And whoops, I just messed up because we have 2 files with the same name. Oh, and I could see that the Data IO just booted up. Okay, so now we have 2 files. Okay, Data IO is doing a self-test. Okay, cool. All right, so here are the 2 firmwares, A and B, and we can kind of tell whenever one is messed up because firmware A, obviously the message here is messed up, but this one is good. Copyright code contained herein, 2008. version 2.35, and there's a date and time, 2008 512K of flash. So that's actually not the RAM, that's the amount of flash memory between these two chips. RAMCheck written by David Y. Feinstein, Innoventions Incorporated, and there's their phone number. And here is all the code. And we have some error messages here, and a bunch more strings and stuff. So firmware B is the correct one. All right, back on our data I/O. There is the main interface. So we're going to do select device, and I gotta go find that ICT thing. And the reason why this matters is because the different chips are read out in different ways and programmed in different ways. So you need to make sure you like pick the right one. So 18CV8, number 5. Now I'm gonna need to switch disks in a second. So I'll hit enter, and it's gonna say, cannot access algorithm 1. I happen to know that's on disk 1. So I'll switch this to disk 1 and hit enter, and that should load the algorithm. Okay, there we go. ICT 18CV8 is selected. Now I'm going to pop this chip out of here, and we are going to try to dump it. Now I will mention that as far as I'm aware, the whole write protect thing is not something that the programmer is going to be able to detect. So when we try to read this, it's not like it's going to say, oh, write protected, I can't read this. It's just going to read bad data. So the dump I make here, I will upload, but it might not be actually good. The chip is in the programmer, so we're going to say load device. Destination is RAM, so that just means it's reading it out. And there it is. Oh yeah, checksum is all 0000. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it's blank, but that's not a good sign. So let's go to look at what the contents is. So we say edit data, and we can edit the logic, and yeah, okay. So the chip is not readable. We can look through all the logic locations, whatever these are called, and they are all intact. So that really means that this chip is just not readable. So I'm really sorry about that, but it just doesn't surprise me. I mean, when they grind off the tops of the chips, you kind of know that they don't want people copying their code. And that's probably some master logic that is required to make this thing work. Everything else is jelly bean, right, on here, except, oh, maybe the CPL deprogramming as well. But this is probably some magic that makes it all work, and yep, protected. Nothing I could really do. And yeah, while there might be ways to brute force the device, it just depends on if it's combinational or just a logic device. If it's just a replicating logic and has ins and outs, then it is something that would be possible to brute force. But if it's combinational logic, like there's state tables and stuff that's inside, that's much more difficult. And maybe there's projects out there to do it, but that's not something that I have access to. So if it's not readable by my data I/O, then unfortunately there's just nothing I can really do about it. Okay, well, what I need to do is get this thing at least back together with that top board. So I need to make sure that this thing is still working, because I'd be pretty upset if it was failed, just to make sure that PAL's in the right orientation. These two EEPROMs are in the correct orientation, and I don't see any pins that look bent. Everything looks good. I didn't touch anything else. So let's pop this board back on. Well, that was pretty easy. And let's see if this thing still works. Fingers crossed, because anytime you take stuff apart, you can mess it up or break it. Okay, so far so good. 2.35. All right, great. Stored setup is on. View setup, whatever. Let's let that go. Yep, there we go. Excellent, excellent, excellent. This thing still seems to be functional. So I'm just going to spend a moment to reassemble this unit. I just realized before I put this back together, I just need to take a picture, a higher res picture of the main board. That way we have a record of it. And just like that, it's all back together. Let's make sure it still works. I'll get some memory. We can do a quick RAM test on this. Yes, looks like it's good. Case is not wobbling. I took a second to take a little bit of dust that was inside of there out. And yes, it is now detecting that it's not these DIMMs or the SDRAM. It is this module that is working. Actually, I realized I have a bunch of DIMMs we can test, so I'm gonna pop this module off actually. And let's test out this DIMM. Looks like it's PC133. You don't have to have this off to insert it. As long as the power LED is off, you are good. And this should now detect, should say DIMM. Yes, sync, so SDRAM, which is what this is. So you just give that a push, so it's in there. We'll hit F1 basic test. So it's PC133, it's DRAM, 2 clock, I don't know, it shows the size and everything like that. page burst, 130 megahertz, JDEC stuff, 6 nanoseconds. I don't know, it shows a whole bunch of stuff on here. 32 meg times 64. So this is a 256 megabyte module. And if we want to do an extensive test, we hit F1 again. And now it'll do a more fancy test. And you can see, it's doing a March test, which is excellent. And it's testing at 3.3 volts, which is the native voltage of these things. And I know if you turn on some options in here, I don't know if they're on or not, it will like test it at like 3.0 volts. Maybe we'll test it at a higher voltage as well, just to make sure like it doesn't overheat or have it act up or whatnot. Typically, I've found with this tester though, is even with the basic quick test, if that passes, almost always the memory is good. This is obviously for testing very subtle issues, but typically it'll just fail very quickly on the basic test. And in that case, I know the memory is no good and it should just be recycled at that point. Now it will try to tell you which bits are bad if they are. And there we go, it's doing final test. It's already been running for a minute. There we go, extended test good. Yeah, 256 megabytes. So it actually tells you on this screen the full size of it. So there it is. That was a test of one of these modules. So we'll turn this off and we'll plug this adapter plate back in. Here's a couple 30-pin modules from our recent video, the Macintosh repair videos. These should be 256K each. So those just pop in like so. I mean, it's so easy to get these in and out. It's just awesome. See how easy they come in and go out. That's why these sockets are so cool. So we'll hit F1 for test. And yep, 256K times 8 bits. So that's just 256K. It's fast page memory, which is understandable. Looks like, I think it's actually running at 88 nanoseconds, even though this is -12 memory, so 120. It's actually working at 88.5. I think this thing will very quickly test, figure out exactly how low it will work at. So you could use this in a system that needs 100 nanosecond RAM, for instance, and it would be totally fine. What's interesting is because this RAM is so much slower than the SD-RAM, notice how long this is taking compared to the basic test for the SD-RAM, this module right here. That tested so much more quickly. In fact, I'm kind of surprised how long this is taking. This almost doesn't seem right. Over a minute? All right, so something's clearly not working here. I'm going to power cycle this thing again. We'll try that again. That didn't seem right. We're pretty much getting the same thing. It should have been done by now. Maybe I need to factory default this thing. Here we go. I'm in this screen, default, set for default configuration. Great. Now we'll try this again. Yeah, it's sort of the same. Weird. So I just did a default setting in another area there. Oh, now it says 86. It's 89. Okay, so it varies slightly. I guess that makes sense. So we have test flow. I'll just set this to defaults as well. Save it to EEPROM. What else is in setup? Anything else I can reset to defaults? F4 auto. Okay, automatic operation. So let's try it now. There we go. That's more like it. It should be very quick. All right, so it's telling us here, yeah, RAS 0, Banks 1. Yeah, okay, cool. Extensive test. All right, so it does look at all these different voltages it tries. Make sure the RAM works at all of those. Does a bunch of tests at 4.5. I mean, if it's passing all this stuff, I think we're going to basically say, that this memory module is good. I got my pen here ready to mark it because I was unsure if these were good. I thought maybe they were bad in that one system. This is the one that had the weird video problem. Relative spikes. I think I normally had all this stuff turned off, which is why we never saw this on the last extensive test, because I don't know how necessary all this is to actually work. Look at the power LED flashes. Chip heat mode, 5.5. Look at the amperage there. 0.6 amps? Interesting. Oh yeah, there's some warmth coming off those chips. I wonder what it does to load it up. But that thing completely works. Nice module. I don't think I saw any March testing there though. exclusive test, single bit, auto loop. Anyways, yeah, oh yeah, it continues to run when I took it out. So let's try this other module real quick, see if this one is good. Much faster, that's how it's supposed to work. 76 nanoseconds on this one. So it's a bit faster there, isn't it? Oh, it did have March testing on there. I just saw it. And it runs it at 4.5 volts as well. Pretty cool. Interesting, I can actually hear clicking out of it as it was doing that burst testing. And I wonder if this heat mode runs it at this higher voltage and then puts a lot of load on the data line outputs of the various chips, which probably just pushes them. They're not burning hot, but they're definitely a bit warm. But there we go. That module is super good. No issues whatsoever. Cool. All right, so that's it for this video. I think I got what I need to get out of this. I got those ROMs dumped. We know we can't dump the PAL, and this thing is still working perfectly now that I factory defaulted it. It was acting a little bit strange, but I'm sure there was a setting in there that I messed with that caused that. This is an awesome device. Unfortunately, these testers are very expensive and hard to find. I think they're expensive just mainly because they're rare, and a lot of them have just been thrown away over the years. So any that do come up for sale, people know how useful these are. So I'm extremely lucky to have JP, who sent in the main module, and then Vince, who sent in the actual module that I would need to make this thing useful for testing most of the memory that I have. And yeah, this thing is freaking awesome. So if you can get your hands on one, I highly recommend it. They make great stuff. And if you do have one and the firmware is out of date, then maybe you can try the firmware that I just dumped here. Like I said, I'll put links down below so you can access that. And there'll be pictures of this unit plus the other unit as well that Andrew had. So you can check the jumper configurations and stuff. And it's, yeah, it's a bit of a shame that I couldn't dump that PAL. Maybe one day someone will come across the files from this company when it went belly up with all the latest firmwares and the JED files for programming those GAL chips. Those chips are super common. We'd totally be able to program those if we could get our hands on those files. So that's the sort of work that I spend some of my time doing. I don't normally make videos about this, but I kind of figure this is perfect for the second channel. If you happen to have a device like this that's kind of rare and not really well documented, then perhaps consider opening it up. And if you have ROM chips in there, just dump them and put those online for someone else, because you never know, someone could have one of these that fully works, but maybe their ROM chips got damaged somehow that would prevent them from using it. Or maybe, like in this case, Andrew can upgrade his and get better functionality out of his unit as well. So there's lots of possibility, and it's really important to get this stuff preserved. And anyone can create an archive.org account, upload this stuff there. GitHub is the same thing. You can stick this code on there as well. And yeah, it's just excellent, because I don't know how many times I've gone looking for something to try to upgrade it, and I just can't find any information out about it at all. Kind of like the Zenith ZT1 on the main channel. There's just no info about it. No one's ever dumped the ROMs, or if they had, they never shared those, or if they had as well, they got lost. So it's good to stick them in a spot like archive.org where someone might be able to find them and use it. Anyways, that's going to be it. So if you like this video, thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. Huge thanks to my supporters. Names come for that screen. Make it possible to do this full time. YouTube junk, subscribe, etc., etc., etc. And that's going to be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.